Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Expanding the Zone. I'm Shane Combs alongside my brother Matt Combs, and we are coming at you on show 74 here. Thank you, Dr. Chris Good, as always, for all the support here on the YouTube channel. Check us out on the YouTube side if you have us on your podcast app. If you are watching us, thank you. Be sure to also get us wherever you get your podcast app so you can take us with you wherever you go. And, Matt, as we come up on a show this week. I guess it's kind of a fun topic, but there really is a serious connotation in leadership. And, and when I was putting together a title, I know sometimes we joke as we get older, we don't want to be that get off my lawn type of guy, but it just comes with as you get older. And sometimes you wonder, are you getting older? Or are you getting smarter? Or are you getting both? uh, but I guess what brings this up is there's so many different things as you go through leadership, you go through coaching, you go through all these different years, and there's things that come up, and after a while they really start to become a little bit pet peeves. And we've done shows in the past about pet peeves, and we've done some old school, new school, and so forth. So there may be a little bit of repetition, which is always fine on these. But the angle we're coming at it from tonight is being aware of some things that are starting to maybe bother us. Maybe if we're being blunt or honest with ourselves, maybe they're passing us up. Um, maybe they are things that we need to be a little bit more open-minded. But at the same time, I think we've always been pretty consistent on here to try to be open-minded, the new school stuff. But at the same time, recognize that just because we used to do it different doesn't mean we did it wrong. So as I welcome you to the show, and I just kind of throw out that particular title and tonight's topic, maybe give us a little introduction, maybe where your mind's going as we get into this week's show.
Yeah, I think Shane and I think probably every generation of people goes through this where you're like, we used to do it differently, or man, I wish we'd do it the way we used to. Um, and I think maybe it's sometimes it's a longing for the past or whatever, but I think sometimes sometimes there's some credibility to it in terms of, maybe some things have been taken too far. But I think to be fair, there's probably some things we'll discuss tonight that are kind of new ideas that are kind of cool in their own way too. I don't I don't like to think of us, Shane, as old, fogies here that can't we're recording this the day after the Major League Baseball All-Star game. And to give you an example, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from a brief conversation we had today, I think you and I both kind of enjoyed the tiebreaker last night, right? Where guys get up there and take three swings each. I don't know how you felt about it completely, but there's kind of a new idea that as a baseball purist you would think, but so I don't know. I think we're open to some new ideas, but I think there are some things that are out there that sometimes we laugh about, like, oh, that's kind of crazy, and so I guess we just thought we would do a show about them.
Well, I certainly liked it better than the tie that year in Milwaukee. Did
Yeah,
the overreaction of, hey, let's give World Series home field advantage to the winner of the All Star game. so
yeah,
so I do think the MLB's come a long way in their decision making in that aspect. So yeah, I'm open minded to that. I thought it was good TV. I know you and I have joked before. About the base runner at second base in
yeah,
the 10th inning. I'm trying, it's growing on me a little bit. I don't know that I love it, but I
yeah.
understand the purpose for it. So yeah, there's things that I never want to get to a point in my career where I'm afraid to try something. And then I think that's where we miss the boat sometimes. I think sometimes we think that every decision has to be an all or nothing. Like, okay, we're going to do this, and all of a sudden we're going to do it for the next 20, 30 years. Well, I don't know if that has to be the case. Don't
Right.
you think sometimes we miss the boat when we're not willing to step out, maybe try it just a little bit, and then but I think where we mess up sometimes is we don't recognize, oh, wait a minute, we're wrong. Maybe we used to do that a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think I wonder sometimes, Shane, if sometimes the motivation for a decision um, plays into plays into it too. Like, are we, is a decision being made to truly try to better something, or is it more entertainment based to where it's just all, because I do think we obviously we live in a world where there's kind of entertainment constantly at your fingertips, and I think people um, almost expect that now, no matter what they do, whether it's go to a ball game, whether it's, you know, um, sit around and want to watch TV, you've got a bunch of different options, right? Whether it's, I mean, even stuff like church and stuff like, well, we see it in the professional world. If you're a principal and you're running a professional development for your staff, I think probably staff, would like to be kind of entertained, right? They don't want to be bored. I think so. I think sometimes some of these ideas that we're going to talk about tonight maybe are entertainment based more than just, for the betterment of a game or a product of some kind.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you bring up the entertainment thing. Yeah, I was just joking with a buddy the other day. The new baseball thing, the banana people. What are they called? The
Savannah Bananas.
Gee, man. The so this guy's like, yeah, you see this guy's out there on stilts, he's throwing the ball and they're hitting it, running. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen it before. It was followed by a clown and a guy putting his mouth in the side of a lion's, his head side of the lion's mouth. It's called the circus. Like, yeah, and maybe that's just my purest baseball side, but like, I don't need that entertainment value. Now, is that needed? Like your Harlem Globetrotter things like that? Is it one of those things where that's bringing the younger generation to the game. Yeah, I don't know, but I guess I come from an old school, I guess, of where like I don't need the game to be quicker. You know what I mean? Not that I'm
yeah,
against some of the pitch clock and some of the different things. I love the game. I've given 40 years of my life to it. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those
yeah.
things where, but at the same time, I guess I'm becoming very closed minded because there really is an entertainment value that kind of brings the younger generation to it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess, I'll have to return those banana tickets I got you for Christmas this year, man. But no, I think that like for me and the Savannah Bananas, I watched it on TV one day, kind of got a good chuckle out of it. But like, but I think it's just a preference, right? I mean, I think it's kind of like, um, again, there's motivations for all this. You said something about maybe bringing a younger generation in, or you take baseball, a lot of the rule changes to speed up the game in terms of how many disengagements or pickoff moves you can make to first, and the pitch clock, and some of those things. And to be honest with you, I mean, I really consider myself about as true a baseball fan as there is. I've watched a lot of baseball. You are too. I kind of like some of those rule changes. We've done shows on rule changes, right, Shayne, about how sports that have cut, like at the high school level, sports like volleyball when they went to rally scoring years ago, or some of
No
these
question.
sports have improved greatly based on some of this stuff. So I don't want to discount all of it. I think Major League Baseball has improved in some of those areas. I made the comment this year watching a high school baseball game that I wish they would go to the disengagement rule at the high school level, because obviously you're not going to go to a pitch clock because that involves all kinds of things at the high school level. But why not the disengagement rule? Why do I have to sit there? I went to a junior high baseball game this year. My son plays junior high baseball, not to get off topic here. And I saw five pickoff moves in the first inning. I saw two pickoff moves to first. I saw the pickoff move to second. And then for some reason, at that age, they hold runners on third like you do first. Like you put your right foot on the bag, you stretch out like a third base or holding runner. I have no idea what's going on there, but I saw a couple pickoffs to third. And I told my wife, I was like, we're going to be here for a double header. We're already sitting out in the sun for about 4 hours today, and I've got to watch five pickoff moves. So I think there could be some positivity to that. But I think back to tonight's show. Um, I think that again, it goes back to that motivation of why you're doing what you're doing in terms of, you know, you and I like golf, right? And professional golf has went through this. When Tiger Woods was popular, the game blew up, right? Everybody wanted to watch it. And when he kind of fell off, there came a time there where people wouldn't have watched those guys if they were playing in their backyard. And now there's a couple popular guys that sort of come back around. But but again, what did Live Golf do? Well, they came in, we're going to try something a little different. We're going to do some team events, and players are out there wearing shorts, right? It's a little more laid back. There's some music playing in the background. You know,
It's kind of like your Saturday afternoon scramble.
yeah, yeah. So it took this sort of stuffy, type of like sport and tried to loosen it a little bit. So, I think there's a place for all of that. And a lot of it, like your bananas example, it is a little bit of a personal preference, like the Harlem Globetrotters, right? I don't think anybody ever was mistaking that for like great basketball, but it was entertainment, you know. Just for the record, Shane, I actually coached against the Harlem Globetrotters. We had the Harlem Globetrotters came to Vinton County back in like 2003, 4, something like that. And somebody had to coach the Generals, right? And that somebody was me, right? So I had to just sit over there and take one on the chin to for the good of
For the event,
yeah, for
the entertainment.
for the
Yeah.
show, right? Yeah. So no, but anyway, I know I was all over the place with that, but like I think a lot of what we talk about tonight, I think you have to get down to the root of it and say, well, how did that even start? What caused them to do that?
Yeah, it really is a great place to go first here in terms of I do want to look at what I would consider the foundation of all this. I don't care if you're thinking old school, new school, whatever it may be. I think all time periods can agree that when it comes to competition, when it comes to doing your job at a high level, when it comes to being a part of a group or a team or whatever it may be, effort and attitude are two things that are really, really big. I think you see that in all leadership culture. Agree? You know, what I mean, it's do you have a great effort
Yeah,
in your job? Are you trying to do things the right way? And do you go about it in an attitude? We just did a show here, making the most important thing the most important thing, right? If that's trying to win a game, if that's trying to be successful in the workplace, whatever that might be. And I guess I come back to a foundation of I miss a time when we appreciated consistency and efficiency a little bit more. I guess sometimes I think in today's time, good is boring. You
hmm,
know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think we have more of a desire to see greatness, even if it's 1 out of 10 times, even if the other 9 times are yeah, whatever. Um, I've used the analogy before, like I'm certainly not a Steelers fan, but like what a Mike Tomlin's done in the NFL. I've said that on the show before. I mean, in a league with a salary cap where their goal is to make every team somewhere between like 6 and 11, 11 and 6. Here's a guy that just keeps having winning seasons. I mean, even your best teams probably 14-3, 15-2, maybe, and you're only talking one or two teams. Any team in the NFL that's losing, or winning less than 5 games by the last month or two of the season, they're probably losing on purpose, or they're
right.
certainly not putting their best foot forward. So my point is there's an example of consistency. You mentioned Tiger Woods earlier. What always impressed me so much about him beyond just the winning was the incredible streak of never missing a cut. I mean, nowadays you
Uh,
see stars miss a cut every month. You know what I mean?
right,
You'll see it. We're on the eve of the Open Championship here in the British Open. We always grew up calling it. You'll see 4 or 5 big names come Friday afternoon. Oh, they didn't even make the cut. You know, what I mean,
right.
it's one of those things where consistency and sticking with it. Um, when I was growing up, a lot of times one bad habit I got into, and a lot of times if I was playing a video game or playing a different thing or whatever, you'd like if it didn't get off to the way you wanted, you'd start over. Or sometimes I was guilty out on the driveway. If I wanted to make so many out of 50 free throws, I go off the bat, start, oh, I'll just start over. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where after a while I started to learn that you've got to go ahead and finish out that particular rep and do the
Uh-huh.
very, very best you can, no matter how cliche that is, because it goes. That's one thing I'll give you a lot of credit for. I know you love golf. You're someone that in your golf, if you get off to a bad start, you always grind the round out. You know what I mean? Where
Mhm.
where there's a lot of people that go. Talk to us a little bit about that mentality, because I think anyone who's competitive wants to chase greatness. They want to work at it. They want to go, but have we lost a little bit of sense of the desire to be a little bit more consistently available, consistently good at what we do on a day in, day out basis?
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. And I think some of that is, sort of like what gets praised, right, gets repeated or gets,
Mhm.
reinforced. And I think like a lot of times in our world, especially in sports world, great plays get get praised, right? Like if you look at Sports Center top 10 or whatever, or even in a more of a local type of media where you're just getting tweets and little short videos put out about maybe a high school game, you're always seeing the last second shot or a dunk or something really phenomenal, a behind the back pass and transition at the oohs and ahs. And there's a place for all that. No doubt about it. There's nothing wrong with those things. But I think what you don't see as much is a kid just making an extra pass, just squaring up, drawing the defense, making an extra pass, or a kid in baseball. We talked last week, or one of the shows the last couple of weeks, of getting a sacrifice bunt down, right? Or just doing some of those little things. And I think that consistency and that kind of grinder's mentality of just doing things right, you know, as much as possible over a day to day type of thing. Yeah, I do think it probably gets lost a little bit. And again, the reason for that, I don't know. I do think it's a little bit of we have again that entertainment value of wanting to see these extraordinary things, and maybe just those consistent, really good things get lost.
It's impossible to have a show like this and not have technology come up. And
Right.
and as I starting to look at a lot of things in technology, those things can really challenge you into your teaching career, into your coaching career, and different things. Because this is one place where if you're not willing to adapt and change a little bit, you can really get passed up. And I've had examples. I'll be direct honest with you about. Um, but then there's other things where sometimes I think it becomes a crutch, and I think some of our younger leaders or not maybe developing in their entire approach to the game and in the way they evaluate the game and the way they teach the game or even some of our teachers in the classroom. And you know talk about entertainment value. Game changer is something a lot of baseball,
Right.
softball people out there would know, all the way down to the little league level. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of game changer. Well, there's different ways of, back in the day, you keep the book, or you have your, you had your different, computer programs for stats. Well, now the game changer does it all there. Now they have the pitch com, right? They're calling pitches all the way to the highest level. This worked its way down in the high school where you're making videos increased. All the advanced stats are coming, and a lot of that comes from like the game change. You plug the stuff in, it gives you all this stuff, and I think all of that stuff is fine. I think
Mhm.
there's a place for all of it, but at the same time, I just wish sometimes more players and more coaches would just watch the game. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you don't need to know that Ellie over the last 2 weeks there is hit 5 balls over 110 miles per hour, because if you watch the game, you can see that he hit the ball hard. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right. Right.
well, why did he hit the ball hard? Well, he stayed back on it. He went the other way. He got a pitch on the inside he could handle. He did, are you breaking it down, or are you just basing your entire opinion on a bunch of numbers and a bunch of different things? So you see the balance back and forth
Mhm.
there. Like I in no way would try to continue in coaching, or try to advise younger coaches without saying, hey, you better be on your A game when it comes to some analytics and your
Right.
ability to at least utilize and discuss the modern day analytics and statistics that are there. But at the same time, do you see where I come from as an older coach sometimes, of like, daggone it, sometimes I still like to go scout the opponent. Like I know you are a film
Mhm.
watcher to the end of an earth and back. No one out prepares you on the basketball scene. But as much film as I would have, Matt, as a basketball coach, every now and then, if my schedule allowed it, I,
Mhm.
I still enjoy getting in my car and going in person and getting down on floor level and
Mhm.
seeing that opponent and seeing them right there in person do some of the different things I wanted to take notes on. So you understand what I'm asking there, and the balance? How do you describe that to the younger leader in terms of not just completely becoming so 100% technology that you lose sight of learning in your craft?
Well, I think what it comes down to, Shane, and think about what we try to teach kids all the time. Or, I try to teach my own children. I don't know how good a job I've done really, but um, the proper way to use technology. We try to teach students the same thing, like how positive social media can be, right? When used the right way. Yeah, and we talk about that all the time with kids, and we've seen a lot of examples of it being used in a real positive way. I think the same thing goes to what you're saying right here. I think that there has to be use of all that. Like, if you just bury your head in the sand and say, I'm not gonna, like you said, I'm not gonna look at analytics, like you said, you would definitely advise against that to a new coach or whatever. You have to be willing to use it. But what gets me, I guess, one of these get off my lawn moments is when people use like analytics as a be all end all to every coaching decision. Yeah, I think we did a show on this too a couple years ago about analytics and how useful they can be. But at the same time, people that use them just exclusively, um, I don't know. That's kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, because I've always felt like I've always felt like coaching is still more of an art than a science, still to this day, right? That's the way I feel about it. But has it become a little more of a science because we have these things at our fingertips? Sure. In basketball, there are certain analytics that I use game to game. Like, there are certain things I really believe in as a coach, whether it be point per possession offensively, and some stats like that I think are really true stats. That in those cases, the stats don't lie. But I think there are times where, if you're not careful, numbers will mislead you, and stuff like that will mislead you. I remember a while back I saw a Reds game. They were facing a lefty, and the lefty had what's called reverse splits. The lefty actually was worse against lefties than he was righties. But the Reds played 8 right-handers that night in the lineup. So at times you'll see a baseball team go all in with analytics, and then at times you'll just ignore analytics because you want to do it the old-fashioned way and bat righties versus lefties. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like when do you use them? When do you go with your gut? Um, I think that can be tricky for a coach in today's society. We see it with teachers, Shayne. How much over the last 20 years have teachers been asked to use data, right, in what they do and how they develop their game plan, so to speak, right, to teach students? I mean, we've bought into it as an educational society too. It's not just a sports thing. So it's here and it's not going anywhere. And I think to not use it at all would be foolish. But I don't know, man. There's still a place in leadership for a good gut feeling and making a call based on, like you say, the eye test, just what you see.
It's interesting because I'll tell you where it crosses a line for me is when it goes from some of the analytics into the actual skill sets and into the skills that we're trying to coach. Like, I'll give you one that just jumped out at me. Happened in a Cincinnati Reds game here about a week ago, and it ruined my evening. It was the night where the Reds lose on the wild pitch pass ball. And that's another thing for a baseball coach. Wild pitch pass ball is the same thing. I know statistically one's a pitcher's fault, one's a catcher's fault. If you're the catcher, it's your fault. Even if that's unfair, like the ball can't go to the backstop, right? I mean,
Yeah.
shy of like Bull Durham hitting the bull, like when there was Kevin Costner down
Oh
there
yeah.
hit the bull. So we may
Yeah,
truly
that's
be
when old
dating ourselves
Crash
there.
told him. Crash told him I wouldn't dig in if I were you here.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what
Now I know we're
I mean?
dating ourselves. The but it's one of those things where they have these new catcher stands, and you see it all the way down to the high school level, and you see these new swings and the launch angles and all these different things. And what's happening is, you know, we're really fundamentally all the way down to the core when we're trying to work with 10, 11, 12, and then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year olds that, let's face it, probably aren't major league bound. A lot of them are really good little league, really good high school players, right? But they're
Right.
still they're still younger players. And I think you see it in the quarterback mechanics. I think you see it in ball handling and basketball. Maybe there's a little bit of a flair or a fanciness or whatever, and we lose sight of some of the most fundamental things that can end up being the difference between winning or losing. And I think that's a hard thing to grasp as a coach as well, because it's one thing not to be a little bit more open-minded to the entertainment part of Game Changer and families following it and stats and all these different things. And, okay, I can have that discussion. But when it comes right down to doing a one-on-one workout with a point guard or a quarterback or a catcher or a setter in volleyball, there's still some fundamentals. I don't care if we're talking 1985 or 2025, that still are the foundation of what we're doing. Am I being way too old when I say that?
No, and I think what happens is sometimes is that what are considered those basic skill sets that people need, they sort of get, I don't know what the right word is, almost skewed a little bit. Let me give you a couple of examples. Like in basketball,
Yeah,
you know, most people would agree ball handling is an important skill, right? Well, yeah, I can remember in one of the years, a couple of years ago, a few years ago now, I guess, um, where I'd always ask my players sort of individually. We do like an exit interview at the end of the year, and I'll say, "Hey, what is an area you think you need to get better in?" And like 60% of my guys said ball handling, which struck me a little bit because some of the guys that said ball handling, I was thinking, well, that's really not, your role is to pass and cut. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
it's really not the ball.
yeah.
And so
The Hoosiers line where keep your faith.
yeah, I mean, but
Uh,
like because there's certain guys that's just not their role. And I think what it is ball handling is something that, yeah, again, you can get online, you see these great moves, these
yes.
crossovers that make somebody fall down and everybody starts going crazy. And you know, whereas the ball handling that I'm talking about as a coach is, the ability to just get the ball from A to B against pressure, get us in an offense, pass it, start the offense, be able to dribble it well enough to make your own move if you're talented enough to get into the mid range or to the rim. And, you know, but we've taken ball handling and it's become sort of an and one video type thing versus the ball handling that coaches want to see. It's the same way with shooting. It's like the mid-range shot in basketball's gotten a bad rap. Like, I don't know about the mid-range shot. That's not a high percentage shot. I think it's a great shot when the right player is squared up from 12 feet. But when you start shooting runners and floaters and all these crazy things in the lane, yeah, your percentage is going to go down. So we've taken the mid-range shot, which has always been okay. And now analytically, it doesn't look okay because we're taking bad mid-range shots because again, everything's got to have a little flair. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think sometimes it's on us as coaches and leaders to make sure that our guys know what we're wanting them to work on. You know what I mean? Like exactly what we're wanting you to be able to do. I can remember you told me a story one time, Shane, about a guy that reported to you a young pitcher that told you he had 5 pitches. You remember that?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
your response to him was one of them called strike one, because you know what I mean? Like you need to start there at the basics before you get into all these other things. So I think sometimes there are great intentions. We're going to do this. We're going to work on these fundamentals, but we try to just get a little too creative. Like, sometimes like in basketball, the best thing a kid can do is just go into the gym, set up the gun or Dr. Dish or whatever you have, and just put your left foot down, catch it, step in, and shoot 100 threes. Right?
No,
I mean,
no question.
without
Mhm.
a jab step, without a crossover, without a head fake, without any kind of euro, just catch, shoot about 100 times. Um, and when you get done with that, get you some water and catch and shoot another 100 times. I mean, that's what sometimes it takes. But I think we've fallen into the trap sometimes as adults of thinking we have to be real creative, right? You've
Sure.
probably
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it as an administrator. Okay, what's the newest technique we're going to use to reach these kids and this and that, and it's just like we keep trying to come up with the newest thing, and sometimes I don't know that that's necessary.
Well, and Here's another one. I guess I'm looking at different lines that as I cross, I think you get into different mindsets and you get into different acceptance or fighting against acceptance. And I guess here's another one for me is I guess as adults, we better be aware of what's in the culture today because let's face it, the young people that we're leading, that's what they're seeing, right? That's what they inspire to be. We were the our generation was the same, right? We wore the wristband on the hand and the knee brace that wasn't even on the knee because Jordan did that or whatever. So it's those are the types of things that you have to be aware of, and one of them is this flair that today's athlete has that our society and the media has almost invited into the game and wanting the personalities of these athletes to show. And one of them might be like the bat flip. One of them might be, different ways you handle yourself after a big hit, or after a big shot, or after a big tackle. Whatever it may be. This happened in the Reds game here a while back too. It was in the ninth inning. The Reds were down one. I believe Spencer Steer singled to start the inning, and it was the night Will Benson went opposite field. And off the bat, he thought he hit it out. You remember this one? And off of the bat, he thought he hit it out. And when the camera went away, and when the ball hit off the wall, it took a really weird ricochet back towards center field. And my first reaction is that's going to be a home run. He's going to win the game because they were down one. So Spencer Steer scores easily, and all of a sudden Will Benson sliding into third, and come to find out it took him about 3 or 4 seconds to get out of the batter's box. He sat there at home plate and he thought he won the game. Well, Terry Francona, talk about old school, but still, obviously he's adjusted, or you don't win 2,000 games over the course of 24 years without adjusting with the times and the athletes. He basically, in his own way, said in the post game conference that I just really guarantee I feel like that'll never happen again. Well, I would say there was probably a conversation that was had outside of the media later in a one-on-one setting on those particular things. And I say that because I think a lot of these things today, I think it's okay to be open-minded to personalities and a little bit of a flair and a little bit of fun if that's what the game wants. I guess it's not for me. I'm a little bit more old school there, but I get it. I'm open minded. I see a lot of the equipment that kids buy. I mean, I always call them the Ellie mitts, right? Those sliding mitts that the kids like to wear. I mean, the sarcasm in me sometimes wants to say, your batting average starts with a one and your on base starts with a two. You might want to save your money, but whatever it is you want, put them on
Yeah.
there and slide away. But my point is, whenever it crosses the line where impacts, as our show title said here recently, the most important thing no longer becomes the most important thing. That's where I have the get off my lawn attitude, right? I can be
Oh,
open minded and I can try to be open minded to, you know, if a guy flips his bat or he knows he got it out of the box at the major league level, I don't love it at the high school, college level, but at the major league level, whatever. But you see where I'm going with that, Matt? When it
yes.
crosses the line where Will Benson should have been running and
Mhm,
might have caught, now they went on to win that game, but it could have
mhm,
cost his team in that moment. That's no good. When you and I were down with the boys at the game there last week, and Austin Hayes can't slide into second base the way we
mhm,
learned back in like B
uh-huh,
ball,
uh-huh.
and the guy dropped the ball and he's halfway out to left center field. Um,
Well,
those are things where you're not
yeah.
playing the game the right way. Now we've got a problem.
Well, and Shane, I'll hit you with this, and I forgot to tell you this because I knew how upset you were about Austin Hayes not sliding that night. I came home, and the next day, like I record every Reds game. I just have it set to record all of them. Well, I got on there just to watch, go back through it. Having been at the game the day before, I wanted to go back and just kind of watch some of the highlights or whatever. So I went and I watched that play where Austin Hayes doesn't slide. Well, Barry Larkin says, he said they're teaching guys nowadays in certain situations. If you go in standing up, you can sort of get in the way of that guy turning a double play. And I'm thinking, we're almost defending, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why can't we just say, yeah, he should have slid? I mean, I mean,
Yeah, why not just say you bat 4 times a night, it's okay to teach a guy to play hard?
Well, yeah, but and let's say that they really are teaching a guy to go into second base standing up, okay? Which I don't. I'm saying, are we overthinking it at that point? It's kind of goes back to what we were talking about in terms of as coaches. Yes, you want to be up on the latest thing and the latest techniques and how to do things, but you also have to be willing to, you know, there's still sort of a solid way to operate. You said, you were using the example of a celebration almost costing a guy with the Will Benson example. We were scrimmaging a couple weeks ago. We scrimmaged a team that was really, really talented team. They were in the regionals last year, like we were. So we decided to get together to have a scrimmage. I thought it was a heck of a scrimmage. We hosted it over at our place. And their coach was telling me, we were talking about the regional games, and I'd said, we were, just talking about how well we had our chances, and he said, "Oh, we did too." And he was telling me a story about one of the key plays in the game was he had a kid dunk one. He had a kid have a dunk, and I want to say in the regional game, and oh, it was in the regional game, had a dunk, and while he was celebrating the dunk, like while he was sort of doing like I don't know whether like a little shimmy, a dance, whatever, that they went down the other way and got an and one. Okay. And he couldn't get back in time to get involved in the play. So, obviously this coach has been around a long time. He was not happy, but it's stuff like that. But again, that's sort of the generation our guys, the guys that we're working with on a daily basis have grown up in. Um, because it's just the nature of the times. It's like everything filters down from the NBA to college and high school, and more of that stuff is allowed. It used to be you couldn't do hardly any of that. Now in football, if you get a good hit, you can kind of stand up and react, or if you get a first down, you can point and all these different things, and some of that stuff's allowed now, and it wasn't then. And so I don't know if it's a get off my lawn thing. I'm with you. I don't really that stuff doesn't bother me, um, as long as it doesn't interfere with the bottom line, and the bottom line is you're trying to win a game.
Hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I guess another bottom line thing, I know we're starting to run a little long this week, but I think there's a couple more points here that are really valuable that leaders need to hear. You know, availability.
Mhm.
Here's another old school, new school type of thing. I I listen. The Lord has blessed me with incredible health. Um, I am so thankful. I've never had any sick. Now I could get sick this year, and I may miss a lot of time, or something could happen in the family, and I could have to miss. I'm not saying life doesn't happen, okay,
Yeah.
but I'm saying over time, availability used to mean something completely different than it does now. And you see it in professional sports, and you see it in load management, and you see it the way we handle our pitchers in baseball. We see it the way we handle a lot of different athletes. And I would argue, even in our adult world, into our workplace, it's starting to creep and become more and more of a problem. And I guess one old school approach, or you would think it just would be, you know, every generation approach, but I don't know that it is availability is the best ability. And
Mhm.
am I making that up? Have you seen that to be a problem in terms of your overall attendance and just anything that you've been a part of, be it coaching, teaching, principal,
Mhm.
anything?
Yeah, I have. It's funny. I know a school administrator personally who one of the things he always looks at when he goes to hire a new teacher is how many sick days they have compared to how many years they've worked. You know what I'm saying? Because if
Interesting.
they've
Wow.
worked for
Yeah.
20 years,
Yeah.
they should have theoretically a boatload of sick days unless, like you say, someone's had an extended illness, a family member. I mean, all that stuff happens. But yeah, I think that it has become a little more acceptable to miss things. It's become a little more acceptable to um, sort of sit out, whether it be sports or work or whatever, just because we're not quite 100%, you know. It's like it's like the old Sports Center when they used to make fun of a guy who was day to day. They said, "Aren't we all?" You know, and
Yeah,
and and
yeah.
it was. But I do think there's a little bit more in that, and uh, you know, I think sometimes I think it's probably just how you sort of the habits you form, maybe the way you were kind of brought up, and maybe the habits you currently practice. If you're used to being early or at least on time, and all of a sudden you're late, it's almost embarrassing. Like, "Ooh, gosh, I was late today. I shouldn't have been," you know. But I think if it's some people kind of get used to that. It just, yeah, there's definitely more understanding, I think, when it comes to that type of thing now, probably than there was.
And Matt, there's probably some miscellaneous things in my notes here. I can even combine them here and then let you lead us into final thoughts. But like, I see it in our media coverage. Obviously, we live in a day of social media where, we want clicks, and that's probably sometimes where I've started to do more and more media. That's probably where I'm not real good on that side of media. I do this type of thing that you and I are doing. It wouldn't offend me if two people listen or if 5,000 people listen. You know what I mean? Like I do it as much professional development and to try to work at my own craft and hopefully help some different people. I don't know what level of entertainment value or things like that we're trying to throw out there. It's just kind of what we do.
Yeah.
I think of education and the NIL and the college culture. That's something I've had a hard time adjusting to. I've never loved the direction that was going, and I fear that it's on its way down to the high school level at a rapid pace, and will probably be here before we're done. Um, so all of those different things continue to add on. I guess where I would start final thoughts and pass it on to you is be who you are. Like for me, I don't need that in my play by play. I don't need Sports Center top 10, right? I don't need the
Right.
announcer, just a deep drive to left field, so and so goes back, he looks up and it's gone will do for me. I don't need someone to be like, give me your finest cheeses and wine, or like some people will like their home run calls or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
they'll have a special call for the milestone or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't need that. But some people might, you know what I'm saying? And I also respect that there's different ways to go about it. I guess what I would say is go ahead and be yourself. Be very open minded to both old school and new school approaches. But as we said on previous title, I keep going back to that show. You've got to make the most important thing the most important thing. Whenever, whenever one of these categories cross a line where it jeopardizes that,
Mhm.
that's where I just can't budge. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm trying to figure out, okay, where can I not cross the line? That would be it. Where, it's got to be whatever we establish as our goal in, the Paint Valley Middle School, or in a program that you're coaching or whatever it may be. There has to be a line that says, okay, everybody's going to have their own personalities, everybody's going to have their own ways to go about it, but we still have to make the goal. And I think that's a great learning tool when you do a show like this, is to kind of, yeah, it can be fun to look back on how we used to do it, how do we do it now, which one's better, well, there's probably a little bit of both. And and it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to have a little bit old school, new school, but there has to be a common path to getting where you want to go, in terms of the group being successful.
Yeah, Shane, there's so many different ways you can go with this thing. This is an interesting conversation. I didn't quite know where it would go, and I think it's been fun for me at least to have it. But I think at the end of the day, you know, as a coach or a leader, we're getting older, obviously. I think the older you get, the harder it is to connect, especially when you deal with youth. If you're in education and you keep getting older and the kids stay the same age, so
Yeah.
um and if you're not careful, um because I think we've talked about this before. The number one thing a leader has to have be able to do is develop relationships, right? It's a
Right.
relationship based business to coach or to teach or whatever. And you can't develop those relationships if you're stuck in our case, in 1990. You know what I mean? And we're unwilling to see things through a kid's eyes. So there are things like as a basketball coach, if you would have asked me, you know, 15 years ago, will you ever do this? I would have laughed in your face, right? I'd have been like, will you ever, for the first 15 minutes of practice while you're getting loose and doing individual skill work, will you allow for rap music to be playing over the speakers? You know, I would have been like, "What is this, a Gus Macker? No, I'm not going to let music play." What? But you know, hey, guess what? And or music on a bus or some of those things, music in the locker room before the game, about half drives me nuts. But I do it because I think that's my way of meeting my guys in the middle. But there has to be certain things, like you say, Shane, those non-negotiables, those things where you draw a line that you say, okay, we're not going past this. So I do think we've sounded like the old guy in this show, but I think that to last in this business as long as we have and as long as we hope to, I do think we've adjusted and evolved a little bit.
You might have buried the lead there. Is there any good rap music, any rap lyrics you want to share with the
Listen,
listeners there that
listen.
you've learned over the years?
If it is past Run DMC and maybe a little bit of Eminem,
Yeah.
like I'm not being able to name anything, right? So so I just go with it. You know, we may have to implement like a rotating playlist where the coaches get a little bit of say so that we can have some like, you know, Guns N' Roses or something in there. But uh yeah, so I don't know, but no, it's been good. I think this show, I think sometimes it's good to look at these things and be able to admit that, man, I am a little old fashioned when it comes to that, or be able to say, hey, you know what? Let's be a little more old fashioned here in this situation, and get back to the basics a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know how, the listeners of this show, hopefully, if nothing else, that maybe they got a good chuckle with us. Maybe there's something to be learned from this, but it's an interesting topic for sure.
Well, it's show 74, and it's get off my lawn. We're looking at as we get old, looking back at the way we've done it for a long time, looking at some of the new ways, and again, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we have in terms of trying to look ourselves in the mirror and just constantly working to get better. Again, thank you, Dr. Chris Good, for all the support on the YouTube channel. Make sure you are subscribed. Also, check us out over on the podcast app. On show 75 next week, Matt, we'll be talking about sophomore slump. It talks a little bit about expectations and how things year to year change. And we have some examples in today's sports world that we're looking at sophomore slump. And we think that's going to be a really, really neat show that applies to all different levels of our athletes and our leaders. So look forward to bringing that to you. So on that note, we'll get on out of here and we'll see you again next week. It's expanding the zone for Matt Combs. I'm Shane Combs. Thanks, everyone.